Okay. Welcome to the show. David Beseler with 48 Planks. I love your work, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What do you think of my table? See, we tried hard, but it's not like we hired a professional.
Right.
Yeah. You guys make beautiful furniture.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Tables, pretty much anything, right?
Well, heretofore, yes, but we are putting some boundaries in place.
Okay.
One of the, probably going a little ahead on the script here, but one of the things that we've struggled with from pretty much the beginning is boundaries as to what we'll do.
Mm-hmm.
I took a lot of projects just for ego's sake rather than practicality sake. So we are in the relatively near future going to be limiting the types of projects that we do. In the past, we've done things like Murphy beds, and we did an 8.5-foot water wheel for the side of a monstrous grotto in Loomis. And going forward, probably not going to be in our portfolio, but we can say we've done them now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think recently I saw you guys did like a backsplash. Look, but it was like a whole wall. What is that called? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, just a decorative wall.
Decorative wall.
Yeah, for that was actually for Auburn Auto Group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
or auto. Gosh, I should remember the name, but yeah, local
cool.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea now is just like what you're saying is simplify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I think for your mental state too.
Yes.
Efficiency, everything.
Right.
And cool. So like, how old is 48 Planks? How long have you guys been doing this?
So 48 Planks it'll be 10 years old next November. So 9.5 years old now. We were originally called High Hand Reclaimed. We had the opportunity to open our first storefront inside of the High Hand Nursery in Loomis.
Okay.
And the historic fruit sheds there, and then grew out of there and into different spaces, and had to come up with a different name because we were kind of using that name at the the owner of High Hand had let us use it just to kind of launch ourselves. And it didn't take much time, and we had to find a new name. So 48 Planks was created out of that. Cool.
So I'm assuming when you started with this craft, it sounds like you were using reclaimed, like that was reclaimed wood, right? Like that was a big part of the process. Is that it seems like it's kind of like a more, not popular, but like kind of a popular thing to do. Like, we tore down a barn and made this awesome, game table or whatever.
Right.
How did you get into that?
So I was in the early 2000s. I was in more of the real estate market type stuff. I was in title and escrow, real estate investment, et cetera, pretty much everything tied to the housing market. And we all know what happened. That was 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 2007, everything kind of took a dive. My business that I had built kind of fell off a cliff. I had to spend some time licking my wounds, and after I was done doing that, reinventing myself. So I went through a few different, things before I hit on what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now kind of came as a result of actually volunteering at my kids' school. I was trying to reconnect with them after being kind of it's kind of a lifetime movie, the absentee dad who, isn't there for the recital and because he's working, and then he has some major life event that happens, and he refocuses, and that's kind of what happened to me. I refocused on family, and I was spending a lot of time at my kids' school, and I kind of at the school became known as like the dad who would say yes to anything, and so I would have like the kindergarten teacher like, oh hey David, I know you're handy, can you build us some picnic tables for the playground? And so I'd start doing those, and then the parents would see those and like, oh, who did those? And so I got more and more requests to do projects, and honestly, up until that point, I had no idea that I could build anything. I had no idea I had an artistic or creative bone in my body up until that point.
I love that, because what I hear in that story is in some ways it's kind of like I started giving and then I started getting. Not that you weren't getting anything before.
Yeah.
But, I think, like I found in my life, like there's always something to get. Mm-hmm. But, when you find new ways to give, you find new ways to get as well.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's funny because it was actually like when I was kind of resurfacing out of my self-imposed like downtime after having shut down that business, it was reaching out and networking again, which is the only thing I knew how to really do to get yourself launched was like network, mm-hmm. Send out, emails to friends and family and let them know that you're back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started sending those out to my network, and one of the respondents when I sent it out, and it was just something like, hey, time to get back in the game, looking for a new career. If you guys can think of anything you think I might be well suited for, hit me up, let me know what you think. And there was one respondent in particular who said, David, throughout my years, I've seen one thing work over and over again for people. Start volunteering, doing something you love. You don't need to make money doing it necessarily, but start volunteering, doing something you love. And I've seen that turn into a vocation over and over again for people. And so I gave it some thought, and I started doing, putting out feelers to volunteer in areas where I felt like my soul would be kind of,
mm-hmm.
Filled. And
right.
And so I was like Placer Land Trust and was volunteering on the school board, not the school board, but Loomis Basin Education Foundation, the PTC at the kids' school, and through volunteering at the PTC at the kids' school, I started, kind of meeting people. They got to know a little bit about me, about what my interests were, what I like to do, et cetera, et cetera. Started putting me into like, those areas, like building the picnic tables for
yep.
the kindergarten playground, stuff like that. And so before you know it, I'm like, again, circling back around to that, the dad at the campus who says yes to pretty much everything. Build us kindergarten playground or kindergarten picnic tables for the playground, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that the school did at the time is, and they still do, is they do dinner auctions to raise funds for the PTC so that they can make improvements to the campus
right.
and to curriculum and different programs. And so I started doing the dinner auction projects, again, as a result of that volunteer component.
Like helping organize them?
More building them. And it was interesting because I don't know if you have, I don't recall your kids' ages, but
they're kindergarten and younger.
Okay, so once you get into the throes of that life, having kids.
Well, I just volunteered for the Little League board
mm-hmm.
to do fundraising, like be the fundraising agent.
Right.
And it was like, unless they have a full board, they don't operate.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't move forward with the league.
Right.
And I was like, well, I want my kid to play baseball.
Right.
And so it was like, I'll do it.
Right.
And I guess there's one more role,
mm-hmm.
but to be filled. But still, it's like somebody has to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if I want my kid to play baseball, I better help make it happen.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's very noble. But there's also that other layer that is like, I learned this like a few years ago, like reading this Boundaries book, and it's biblically connected. And I'm not a very religious person, but it kind of made sense to me. It was like, even if you're volunteering in those capacities, a no in the heart is a sin if it comes out as a yes on the lips, kind of thing. So
intent matters.
Yeah. So and the reference they make in the book is like there's this guy and his men's Bible study is going to not happen if he doesn't volunteer. And he's like, but I don't have time to volunteer, and I don't really feel like I should volunteer, and there are so many other things that require my attention right now. But he volunteers anyways because he feels obligated. And he's like, well, if I don't do this, then nobody else is going to. And that was the lesson, was like, well, I mean, it's kind of a sin, to not honor your
commitment.
Yeah.
Or
not to honor what's your authentic.
Yes.
Your authentic self.
I agree.
What's going on inside of.
Yeah. Well, so I think in this case, I didn't do it I think I did do it out of authenticity because.
And I'm not saying you didn't.
Right.
I didn't
for
mean
sure.
to imply that.
Right. No, but just reflecting on it though, the idea of, well, I didn't volunteer to be a player agent. like, I don't know exactly what that job is, but I think it has something to do with placing players on teams.
Which is so highbrow for like Little League, right? Like player agent, like Jerry Maguire.
I don't know. It's all official, you know. But you know, if I'm a marketing company, and that's what I specialize in, doesn't it make sense for me to be approaching businesses and, you know, asking for sponsorships? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I know the people, so it's like I'm actually the most qualified to do it, right? So it's kind of not a pride thing, but like a
practicality thing.
Yeah, practicality. Like it feels like my puzzle piece fits. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yes, it's more work. Like, good grief. Right. But
there's always a balance, you know, goes on when you're reconciling everything in your head. Like those components come together, and you decide to or not to, and So
right. No, that's a great story though. I love how, you know, this craft came into place through kind of a more of a self-development process.
And it was, you know, it was kind of like that one person's, her wisdom manifesting itself in that too. Like
in a physical way.
I started volunteering and roads opened up for me with stuff that I didn't even really know my heart wanted to do necessarily, but just through that process, you know. And then, we have all of the Loomis Union School District schools are K through 8. So, and then all of my kids are 2 years apart. So we had a lot of kids,
You're right.
you know, going through that program, and year over year over year, I was saying yes to more and more of the projects. And to go back to kind of like that original question, how that all started to unfold, the reclaim component. I started using reclaim material because I was alluding to, like, you know, hey, when you get into like how school operates when your kids are getting older, you're going to see this unfold probably for yourself. But what they'll do for the dinner auction project is they'll say, hey, they'll send home an envelope, or they'll say there's an envelope in the classroom. Every kid contribute $20, and we're going to use that money to put together our dinner auction project. That's going to go up for auction, and those funds that we get from the dinner auction are going to go to improvements at the school. And so all these parents, you know, we had 20 to 25 kids.
So it's kind of like a multiplier effect. You start with everybody donating 20 to the project, and then the project produces more.
Well, no.
Oh,
that was the rub. So
okay, no, that's
so it would be like you'd put $20 in the envelope, and you'd put all this work into it, and then you go to the dinner auction, and you had 20 parents. Some didn't donate as much, but most of them did, and some donated more. But you have $400 in the envelope, and you put this project together, and you sell it for $400. I'm like, why didn't we just give them $400? Call it good, you know? If it's just because we want to have a social gathering, let's just have a social gathering. But I was like, how can we maximize the profit on this? So I got in touch with a local fencing company and asked him if he had, you know, like reclaimed material that I could go pick up after they did the fence job.
Is this like a person you knew, or you just hit up some random fencing company?
Yeah, hit up a random fencing company, you know, but back in the day, like probably Yellow Pages or something, you know. So looked up the fence company, called him, plug for Mark Aguilar Fencing in Orangevale. Great guy. He's always been super supportive of what we do. So thank you, Mark. So we started going there and grabbing just fence panels, deconstructing them, and then making the dinner auction projects out of that. So it was like zero cost for materials. And the parents, if they gave $20, it wasn't going towards buying the supplies to make the thing, because we were getting all of that aside from donated, you know, hardware and what have you. We were getting that for free. And even in, you know, some cases we were repurposing the hardware that we were getting from those projects. So so we would build like one of the first projects we did was like a huge outdoor playhouse.
Oh, cool!
All out of reclaimed material, and put that up for auction, and got some good money for it. And we had pretty much zero cost other than time.
Right.
And then you know, you have the kid component where the kids come and they help put the pieces together. So we built that playhouse in the kindergarten playground, and the kids came out and they all had a whack with the hammer, and you know, and got a chance to do it, and got their pictures and what have you. So it had special meaning to the parents who were going to be bidding on it.
Right.
But it didn't also, one of the other things that they would do with the dinner auction projects that I never really could wrap my mind around was they would if your purpose is to raise funds, right? you narrow your market when you make like, there would be like quilts that were made that were like all the kids in this one classroom. Well, you limited it
to who wants a quilt.
Right, in the classroom. Like
Right.
you don't, I think it'd be weird to buy a quilt with some other kid's names on it, right?
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
oh, my kid's name's not even on this quilt, you know?
Right.
So we kind of got away from that and made it more of an interactive, like they, you know, yeah, they would take a whack with the hammer.
That have you okay, so before you started doing this and when you were back in the real estate industry, did you consider yourself a creative person?
I mean,
And do you now?
now, yes.
Okay.
Now I'm very in touch with that side of myself. Yeah, the creative side. Back then, aside from, you know, we did a lot of our own home renovations, and I loved going to Home Depot to pick out the tile and
Right.
and designing the kitchens and the bathrooms and picking the flooring and stuff like that. But that was about it. You
Yeah.
know, never. I still don't or haven't drawn anything. I build everything pretty much out of, like, if a client asks me for drawings, I'm
Right.
like,
I don't have them.
Not your guy.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
all an organic process, and I'd hate to give you the impression that's going to turn out like that drawing, because it's probably not.
Have you ever had somebody just not like something?
A couple times.
Yeah.
But, you know, we build probably 300 pieces a year.
Wow, you guys are cranking. I mean, that's like a lot if you're talking about like a custom craft thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's, you know, that's like all ranges, and that,
Yeah.
you know, it could be like I mean, we've built cigar boxes for people, and then we've built.
I saw you just did a shuffleboard table.
We just did a shuffleboard table for Movement Brewery in Rancho Cordova, and that was our first ever shuffleboard table.
Yeah.
That's the boundaries thing. That's where, you know, that
You're like,
it took a
"Oh."
little while for that to come together, because I put, you know, obstacles in my own brain, like, am I ready to do this? I said yes because I have no boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, so how am I going to pull this off? And
And you guys don't just build stuff, right? Like you also, don't you have classes, or not classes, but like workshops?
We do. We have build your own workshops, and those are mainly farm tables. But we have done some barn doors, desks, things of that nature.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to come build themselves a picnic table, you have the plans ready to go, and you walk them through it. Like, how long does it take them to do it, and how much does it cost for them to do it and take the thing home?
So
Roughly.
for instance,
generally.
for instance, today we have a class at 1:30, and they're coming in to build a 5-foot farm table, traditional style farm table and bench. Organizationally, I like to leave it kind of open, so I don't have the packages. Like right now, I don't have the package pre-cut, because inevitably what happens is people come in and they'll look at stuff that we have at the shop, and they'll be like, oh, I thought I wanted that,
Right.
but I really want that.
The shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they just hadn't been exposed to that design before. And it happens all the time. So we'll typically say, like, we know you're coming in to build a table with us. We know that you're thinking it's going to be X. More realistically, it's going to end up being Y or Z.
Right.
So I'm not going to nail you down right now. It's just come in. If that's what we end up building, great. But 95% of the time, it's not at all what we end up building.
Are they usually like, do they have to come back for like a second session? Does it take that much effort on their part, or is it like they're done by 5?
Well, it takes effort, but
Yeah.
they'll, like today, we'll start at 1:30, we'll be done by 5. And that will be with a table and bench, and that is completely fabricated, finished, and one of the components of what we do is we offer delivery.
Right. Oh, that's cool. So you go have fun.
Yeah.
You could do it with friends or family, whatever.
Yeah.
Build it.
Mm-hmm.
You pay your whatever you pay, and then you guys can offer to bring it over.
Yeah, that's part of the service.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the experiential aspects of businesses or lines of service. You know, I think that it's kind of part of what makes our area great. Is that like a great place to live? Is that we have that feel in our community of getting out and doing things, right?
For sure.
I mean, I was born and raised here, so it's just like, you know, if I go to some place, you know, like I go down to the city or something, I'm just like, it's so out of my element, you know. Not that they, like, I mean, in the cities, they got huge farmers markets. There's all sorts of cool stuff that goes on. I'm just...
Yeah.
I really like the
artisans
family
everywhere.
feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Artisans everywhere, trails everywhere,
Yeah.
parks everywhere. Yeah. Really.
Is there any one project that you're like particularly fond of that you guys have built or done, or like, oh, like this one time we did this table and it was made out of koa, anything?
Gosh, like it feels like every week I have a new favorite. But
That's cool.
if I'm being really honest about like the one that sticks with me throughout the years, it's we did the chef's table for Empress Tavern in downtown Sacramento, and it was a passion project. It was very tedious, a very tedious task, like 14-foot long farm table. Yeah. Yes, that one. And then the paddle wheel. The paddle wheel because, I always like it when you say yes to a project and you've never done it before and it just turns out.
Yeah.
And this was like paddle wheel. I'm like, do I really have any business building a paddle wheel? And we put it together and, somehow, some way, like we put that thing on we had a chromoly rod that it sat on that went across and sat on some pillow blocks on either side on these big stacked rock columns. And
Whoa.
we put a 4-ounce glass of water on one of the paddles and it started turning on its own.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we were like, okay, I guess we don't need any motorizing on this thing. So
4 ounces did it.
4 ounces of water.
So then is this like a one that was there like a drip system from the top?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it
Like
recycled.
pumps it up.
Yeah, it recycled the pool water and it came up and it went to a pump, like a water tank pump, and it articulated out. It swung out like the old-fashioned ones too, like train stations
Nice.
would have, and swung out and a little bit of water just got it going. Yeah.
I have another question. What keeps you going? Sometimes as craftspeople or artisans, we start to monetize something that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we monetize it and systematize it, we feel that the passion is almost stripped away. Have you felt that? Or like what is your main motivator to keep making cool stuff? Like the same type of stuff too.
Right. Well, inherently in our business, no two projects are the same, so that helps when they don't take on the same look over and over and over again. The ability to be able to kind of adapt on my own, of my own free will. Like, okay, we had early on, we started doing the farm tables, and we were doing them over and over and over again, and we hadn't really diversified into a ton of custom stuff. And I was mentioning to my partner, Kathleen, I'm getting kind of tired of, the same pattern over and over and over again. And so she was like, well, I mean, maybe it's time for a little bit of a change. And I wasn't ready to make a change yet, so I kept going and going and going and cranking out the same kind of table, even though, again, they were a little bit different. They're all a little bit different. But then I had an experience where one of my workers, who was a friend of mine, I considered him a good friend of mine, he came to work with me for a little while. He needed some extra income because of some struggles that were going on in his family and or in his life. And he, on the side, came to find out was building my tables, same same blueprint, what we were doing every day in the shop, and marketing them on Craigslist for sale.
Right.
And I was like, dude, be a little original anyway.
Or at least offer to buy the plans.
Right.
Like
whatever. Not even that. I mean,
right.
The reality is a simple conversation, him coming to me and saying like, hey, my family needs a little bit more. Would you mind if I built a few of these on my own on the side, not at shop time, I would have even said probably like, hey, come in and build them at the shop. I don't really care if you're doing it on the weekend. Build them, sell them. There's more than enough business to go around. I want your family to do well. I want you to do well. But the fact that he just kind of went around and just started doing it, and I had to find out from going on to Craigslist and like, wait, that looks like one of my tables.
Like, who's flipping these?
Wait, that's so-and-so's truck in the background. So at that point, Kathleen was like, well, you've been saying that you want to do something a little bit different. So, maybe this is your opportunity. Maybe we don't look at this as a negative. Maybe you turn this into a positive. And that's pretty much the day I went in and sat down at my desk, and I was like, okay, what do we do next? What do I want to do next?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you exactly what happened, but for whatever reason, the idea of doing the build your own classes came to me, and I put out a little, for the purposes of reassurance, I put out a little blurb on Facebook, like, hey, who'd be interested in doing a build your own?
Right.
If we supplied X, Y, and Z, would people want to come in and do this? And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and so we started, within a couple of weeks of that, doing the build your own classes, and they've been really popular ever since.
It's really interesting. I feel like you could, in the future, when we can gather again and have like street fair style, it would be cool to like for you guys to show up and have like little, maybe it's just like a birdhouse or something. That might be like a fun way to promote, 48 Planks is like, it's like, okay, there's like the beer stand over there, and like they're selling paintings over there, and you're building a birdhouse over here. That could be a fun thing. I like that hands-on experience.
Right.
That was a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's been very rewarding. I think one of the greatest things is, driving home and passing by multiple houses every day. When I drive home, are filled with tables that have been built.
Our work's in there. Work's in there.
Right.
That's awesome.
And to know, if you knew my backstory with family and what have you and my upbringing, it's really important to me to know that people inside those homes are congregating around tables they've built with us.
Oh, that's very special.
And there's family stuff going on there that's for the most part positive. Nobody knows what's exactly going on behind closed doors, but I think it's okay generally speaking.
So you do tie your work to some meaning, right?
Yeah.
Like that's great. And
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of a critical part of a person's journey. Identifying the work that you're doing has meaning. Just the fact that you said like, well, it's to know that I'm helping families congregate, or like, they could have another table, but
something about being involved in the build process makes it that much more integral to their family.
Yeah, for sure. And, especially for the kids, like kids don't typically like to engage around the dinner table.
Right.
But this creates an opportunity for there to be input into, they have ownership in the process. So they're more likely, in my opinion, to want to sit down at that table and gather at that table because they had a hand in making that table.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We've had kids like claim their spots at the table while we're building,
like ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure. Like, oh, what can I do over here to?
You're like, we may as well burn your name in the side.
Yeah,
right.
we've had kids do like not burning but Sharpie like underneath where their seat was, or identify it like, oh, that knot right there. This is always going to be my spot. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
It almost sounds like that's like the main. Like, if I were to market your business, like that would be the main thing. And then they would find out later that you could custom build something else.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of people who will respond to our Facebook ads on the build your own classes, and they'll be like, do you do other things or do you just do the build your own? I'm like, well, the build your own is actually only about 2% of our own overall business.
Right.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's the great,
other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So your build your own class is our podcast. It's a
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's an experiential happening.
Right.
That resonates well with a general population. Right. And it helps you create name. You know.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you hope to ever hand it off to anybody? Do you hope to what's your end game?
Yeah, Kathleen and I have the rich dad, poor dad conversation frequently, and I do need to set up a passive income stream because the reality is I've been much too much of a right brain for much too much of my life, and I haven't done a great job setting up, myself and my kids for future stuff. So yeah, that's the transition that'll be happening. That's something I have to get really serious about. Transitioning into that, creating an opportunity for the business to survive even when I'm retired.
Right.
Because my goal is in the next few years we'll have all of our kids out of the house and away at their, whatever colleges they choose or doing whatever they decide to do. I have, two sons that are going to be military, so who knows where they'll be.
Right.
But I want to be able to just kind of leave it to somebody capable of handling what we do here, and go off and visit with those guys, the kids, wherever they end up. Yeah.
So it sounds like Colleen's your business partner, right? Is she?
Kathleen's I call her my wife, but we're not married. I mean, we've been together for a long time.
Right.
But yeah.
Yes.
No piece of paper, no ring on that finger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing. It's incredible what you actually can pass on. We're in the process right now, like I was telling you earlier, of kind of documenting. Okay, so like our work, right? Mm-hmm. And when you document your work, meaning, okay, now first I do this, then I do this, then you can actually have it like a document in place to where you can train somebody, mm-hmm. or pass down the knowledge. So I found that, in creative stuff, like producing a podcast or maybe building a table, mm-hmm. or building anything else, as the artist, we mentally skip over a ton of steps.
So many.
Or we don't even acknowledge that we're doing them, mm-hmm. because it's part of your talent. Mm-hmm. It's part of your being. Like, you get so used to knowing how to pick out that plank, mm-hmm. or, knowing how like that saw behaves, mm-hmm. Or that tool. And like, you're not thinking like, oh, check the double kill switch on the saw, and then, make sure that there's not some weird angle and like the guide is like locked down tight. Like, you just do it, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because you realize how much of a like wealth of knowledge you actually are when, mm-hmm. you try to write it all out. Because if you were to hand it off to somebody who has zero experience, mm-hmm. Like, how do I minimize the chances of them chopping their finger off on accident?
Right.
Because they didn't do that one thing that I do every day naturally.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, so that's what we're doing too, is like, and for us, because we're in more of like a beginning stage of our journey, mm-hmm. it's more for us, our ability to grow and to bring people on and be a part of our journey.
Mm-hmm. Your scaling process.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never had to do that because it's always more or less been me running the show, and that's not really a great thing, to be honest with you, because I am all right brain. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, anything else other than the building gets taken care of is a miracle. Right, and I've heretofore been really bad at delegating and surrendering, because at the first instance where somebody, like, in my eyes, fails me,
right,
I take the reins back, right, instead of letting them grow into that role in a natural way. And I'm not terribly forgiving about it. Right. I hold them to standards that I don't even hold myself to, which isn't fair, but yeah, so that's the second part of my life. I call it like, I always say that like I'm 49 years old and I'm finally growing up. I'm like finally learning the lessons that I wish I had the opportunity to learn when I was younger. And, you can only rely on, like, my crutch has been just, people around me have probably heard me say it a million times, like, I'm a right brain, I'm a right brain, I'm a right brain, almost like it's an excuse not to do all of the other things well. And the reality is that if you can't do it yourself well, you got to figure out how to get people in your circle who can help you do it well. That's right. And there are those people there that want to see you succeed. So my task now is to bring those people on.
When you say right brain, do you mean unorganized, or do you mean go with the flow? Or do you mean like
shoot from the hip, go with the flow, artistic, not organized?
Yeah.
Last thing I am, except for those, like they'll talk about a mechanic whose shop is like in complete disarray, but he knows exactly where that
problem
5 centimeter wrench is, or whatever. And nobody else could find it, but he can. So
it's almost like, and I know what the way you described right brain, is, it's kind of interesting because I share that in common with you naturally. Like, that's my natural spot, or like natural place to operate from. And it's almost like we have the ability to just like will something into existence, like that little creation, And
through sheer obstinance.
Just,
Right.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
it's just like, ugh. And everybody's like, whoa, it's beautiful. And you're like, thanks. Like,
Right. Yeah.
but I just wanted to do that. And it's like all the technique is jacked up, or maybe not jacked up, but unorthodox, perhaps. There was something I was doing the other day, and I told somebody, and they're like, that's super unorthodox. I can't remember. I wish I could remember what it is right now. Something I DIY'd and like taught myself how to do.
Right.
Like, I know this is not the right form or technique, but like it works. And they're like, this was like a professional, like an expert, and they're like, yeah, I mean,
it works.
Yeah.
But,
like,
Well, that's what happened like early on in my business. There was one guy who was an arborist in Saratoga who came in to visit. His mom lived in Sun City, Lincoln Hills, and when he was in town, he'd always go to High Hand to kind of check it out. And he came in, and we had just opened our shop, and we were building some fun stuff there. And he was a woodworker, hobbyist woodworker as well, but very detailed, like marquetry, parquetry, like fine joinery. All, he's first place I ever heard about a domino or a festool or whatever. And he was like, man, I love the stuff you build, but like, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? I'm like, it's not my style.
you ever watched that show Parks and Rec?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Never seen it.
I was going to be like, sounds like a real Ron Swanson.
Is he the one who's an actual woodworker?
Yeah,
In
the actor is, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He came in and he was giving me all this advice, like you got to use these things and that and so on and so forth. I'm like, Blair, it's just not me. I mean, I can't be that person. I'm building furniture like I'm Mr. Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. I'm like taking stuff. I don't have a joiner. I don't have a planer. I'm taking stuff and making use of what I have now to build as beautiful a thing as I can with what I've got. And it works for me and it works for my clientele. So I don't, really see having to go that route.
Right.
And so he kind of followed us for a few months, and I'd go up and visit him and grab some material that he had cut for us and what have you. And over that process, he was like watching more and more of what we did on Facebook. He's like, you're lucky. He's like, there are these guys that go to like College of the Redwoods and pay tons of money to do all these amazing woodworking techniques. And it would take them 40 hours to build a table that you build in 3.
Right.
And they would sell it for half the price. He's like, so I think you're on to something. And it's been kind of our our niche ever since.
Right. How do you think that works? Is it what your work? Do you think your work turns out a product that's more saturated in a person's character, and theirs is more sterile?
I think.
Like how is it that you're getting more money for it?
I think that I haven't really ever considered that question fully, but just what strikes me right now is I think that our furniture represents what's going on internally for a lot of our clients, which is they're perfectly imperfect. And it resonates with them because they've got scratches and they've got dings and they're not completely smooth.
Yeah.
And then there are those people who go for that high finish, high luster style who are, usually more trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, I was thinking that's kind of more of like I have a house in Beverly Hills type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other great thing about the style of furniture that we build is, unlike modern furniture, putting a piece of modern furniture into a farmhouse doesn't really work. But you can put a piece of primitive furniture into the most modern of houses, and it works.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the ruggedness too, right? Well, I don't know what you mean by modern furniture. Just stylistically?
Stylistically, right.
Yeah.
You can't, like a piece of Copenhagen furniture or, something from Scandinavian designs inside of a Victorian home.
Right.
Or a traditional farmhouse doesn't work. But if you put you could put an old pine jelly cabinet into a super modern home and it looks like an art piece.
Yeah.
Just because the house maybe looks like more of a museum.
Right.
Than other house might. So yeah, for whatever reason, it's the aesthetic that goes our style of furniture goes into the most types of aesthetics. Right. So it opens us up to a lot more clientele, I think. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they like their furniture to be a conversation piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Hey, this was handcrafted by a local guy.
Right.
You know, or this floor used to be in a barn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or this wall used to be a floor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's like, no way. So, yeah, as a matter of fact.
Well, it makes sense because, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now, and that still gets me. I mean, every time, you know, if I hear the story of something, I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? It was really interesting that this happened to me, given my background and what I do. But we were, when we were blending our families, we were trying to find a house that could accommodate 6 kids and us and pets. And we couldn't find exactly what we wanted. And so made the decision to modify the home that Kathleen had already been in to accommodate and give everybody a room, basically. And so we started an addition off of the house. And in doing that addition, we ended up transitioning the addition into the existing great room downstairs, and we made the decision to just carry the new flooring from the addition into the great room.
Right.
And it was, the flooring that was in the great room, it was covered by a huge area rug, so you couldn't really notice even what it was, but it was just cheapo laminate. Mm-hmm. Probably when she had bought the house 10 years before, the seller was like, let's put lipstick on a pig and call it good, and let's just dress it up for the sale. And they never thought to replace it, but it was like the 99-cent laminate from Home Depot. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, okay, well, we're going to replace that. So we started pulling up the old planks, and there was this beautiful vertical grain Doug fir flooring underneath it.
It's like there's always something.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And then went a little bit further in the story and actually came up here to California Hardwoods. We had already ordered the new flooring, so we couldn't return it.
Right.
But I was like, what can I do with this material? Because do I leave it in there? Do I don't want to
cover that floor back up again.
Right. Yeah. So we ended up. I pulled up a couple of the boards, and we were having our flooring delivered to the house. And I had already had a conversation with Dave at California Hardwood about it, and he's like, let me take a look at that flooring when I come over there, and maybe we can shoot around some ideas. He walks in with the first load of new flooring on his shoulder, looks down at our floor, and he goes, I'll be darned, that's old Kezar Stadium wood. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we resawed a bunch of this stuff back in the 80s when Walden Woods was being built, and this is where some of it ended up. This was old bleacher seating from Kezar Stadium.
So the floor in the house that was there was from an old stadium.
Was the original home of the 49ers in San Francisco,
wow.
Kezar Stadium. So I was like, you just pulled that out of your, what?
Yeah.
That's how could you tell? And I recalled some boards that were underneath the house that I hadn't really looked at too carefully, but I was like, I wonder if those have anything to do with it. And I went back under the house and I brought out one of the boards and I flipped it over, and it was still full thickness. It hadn't been sawn down yet. And I turned it over, and I'll be darned, all the bleacher numbers, the seat numbers are on the board. I'm like, you're kidding me.
So that's in your house now?
We pulled that out of the house.
Okay.
The board that I pulled out from under the house that helped me qualify that he was, his story was legit.
Yeah.
That's on our wall now with coat hooks on it, and that's where our kids put their backpacks. So,
That is cool.
It was an interesting.
That's a good story. I always like to have a good story in the episode.
Yeah.
That one was cool. That was
And again, our house is super modern, so it was one of those, like, there was a rustic floor inside that house that really worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that. Is that the style, like the kind of more popular thing, right? It's like modern rustic combination.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
It's kind of where we took the attempt at the table was like Charlie welded this steel frame together, and I finished the tops.
I need a welder.
I'm not gonna sell my services quite yet.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah, it looks great. Perfectly imperfect.
That
goes with
qualifies
what we do.
for that.
Yeah.
How would I seal this thing? Because this is just stain that I just like rubbed on here, and you kind of gave it a denim look. But if I could get like a matte finish that would help seal it in case I spill my water, do you know of anything that would work like that I could put over the stain?
I'm a big fan of beeswax.
Okay.
So Howard's Feed and Wax, just floating it over pine top. Yeah. It.
How do you
seals
apply it with a
against
rag?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
On this surface, I'd apply it with a rag. Sometimes our surfaces are a little more abrasive, so I'll use a brush on it. But yeah, Howard's Feed and Wax is.
Does it smell good?
Oh, citrus. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right, I'm doing it.
Yeah,
I'm doing it
it's
just
good
for that.
Yeah, and we always do we'll do the demonstration, for the parents who are like, oh, is this going to be, it's going to protect against the wear and what have you, and what if Timmy spills, his Kool-Aid on it or whatever? It's usually their wine, but
Right.
they always put it on Timmy. Yeah. So we'll do a little experiment where we drop a little bit on it and it just beads right up and protects it. Kathleen she's always been kind of the biggest critic of my finishes. And she's like, I don't know, are they going to take that? And, is that smooth enough right there? And I'm like, I mean, we sell like 240 tables a year, and I've had like 3 callbacks.
Seems good
Right.
enough for me.
I think we're doing okay, but I don't know. I could be wrong. And so she came in and she helped me build our family's table. So she and I took a day and built a new family table. And she's like, I'm going to want to wax this thing like every 3 months. I'm sure it's going to wear off and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay,
let's test it in 3 months.
Let's test it in 3 months.
Yeah.
And she will not let me touch that table. I mean, it's the way it's patinaed and
it is now a work of art.
And it's 5 years later, and it's we could still drop stuff on it, and it's a work of art. And even in the areas where it has become ding, those are memory marks. That's not, and it doesn't detract from the quality. It's funny that like people today are so worried about maintaining something as pristine and like don't damage it and don't do this and that and the other. But when you go to like wood countertops, right, are like kind of coming back into, for the last few years they've been coming back into popularity, and you'll get the questions like, well, is that safe? Is it sanitary? Is it going to hold up? Can I chop on it? Can I do this, that, or the other on it? And I always say, like, look, like, go to a southern plantation home, go to an East Coast home, go to Gettysburg, go inside of one of the houses, and you're going to find wood countertops. And they've probably been there since 1820 something.
Right.
And they look great. And it's what everybody walks in and goes like, I wish I could have those countertops in my house.
Right.
I wish I had something that looked like that, so loved and abused and but still looked just. So that's kind of how we sell our furniture is it looks better with age.
Yeah.
It kind of settles in, and that's kind of what's happened
This
with
is
our
fake
table
age
too.
that I gave on this.
Yeah.
I literally just it's so much work, and like as crappy, like you can see how crappy the sanding job is, right? You can see all the squiggles.
Oh, I don't know. It looks good.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I faked the age, it's like, and I like how the flame came out. Just, that is just like a lucky thing. But then I stained it with 2 different stains, and around the edges I used like a darker gray, and in the middle I used a lighter gray just to give it like a vignette. And then I think I lightly sanded over it again to show the grain. But definitely I took inspiration from like the type of work that you guys do,
So you built this since
I built this for the podcast. I'm not kidding.
Wait, this wasn't in the other episodes? It
was not for this episode. I built this table. So
got it. Yeah. For doing the podcast. Yes.
There's
okay. But before you had heard of us.
Yeah, but there's another guy. Iron and Plank is another.
Yeah, Lance.
Thank you for. I was trying to think of his name.
Yeah.
I was familiar with Lance before I knew of you guys, and I was just looking at their work, and it's like they do beautiful work as well, and so that's really where I got the inspiration. And actually, I was gonna have Lance build the podcast table for me, and then he got too busy. He's like, sorry, I can't. I'm okay.
Good for Lance, because he and I struggle from the same affliction. The boundary thing is
No, it's good. He was like, he was on board, and then he was like, I talked to my other half, and we were like, we're just too busy. And I'm like, hey, just thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate the communication, because there's like nothing worse than like somebody leaving you hanging or like leading you on forever. Right. To just tell me if you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was that, and then like, I guess we're building this table, and so that's gonna happen along the way. You're gonna have to pick. I'm trying to do less of the do it yourself all the time thing. Obviously, like we talked about that. Like let's let's be more organized here and be more efficient. But this was a fun project, and it is super meaningful that I did build it myself.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So actually, if you're listening and you're in the area, maybe go build a freaking picnic table with David, because it'll be fun and you'll have something. It's like, it means something to us, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And then I always get to tell people, like, yeah, man, I did the top, and Charlie welded the frame, and like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's our thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Making stuff is cool.
making stuff is cool. That's the name of the episode today. Man. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah.
I
Thanks
think
for having
that I think there was a lot of good, like, little nuggets in there, life lessons. And how about this? Build great things. Build cool things.
Build cool things, yes, but don't lose focus of the other things.
Yes.
You know, if you can put it together and build the cool things while honoring all the other things, then that's the goal. My goal, personal goal, is to not just be a good builder, but to be a reliable builder, to be a builder with integrity, and to just, you know, make every experience with my client feel 100% good.
Yeah.
You know, like that's been my biggest struggle. And again, alluding to, like, I'm kind of growing up again here at 49 years old. I'm learning those lessons regarding integrity. My whole pattern has been like survive.
Yeah.
So you say yes to the job because you don't know, or your relative knowledge is about how you never had when you were younger. So you want to make sure that you always have. So you'll say yes to things just to get that money into the coffers. You know,
yeah,
like,
you're going real deep now.
Yeah.
You're going like, no, that's good. No, it's true. It's very true. Like,
So-
what are you putting yourself through now to repair some past damage? And is that necessary for you to go through that effort? Is that really the way to repair the damage?
It's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Am I going to go hungry? No. You know. Am I going to be wanting for anything? No. So I can, at this age, you know, I'm finally realizing I can change these habits.
Yeah.
I can not approach everything as if my life depends on it.
But I think, you know, if you consider yourself older and you're listening right now, it's not too late. However, wherever you are,
Never too late. Yes.
it's freaking never too late.
I'm so thankful to have had some of the experiences that I've had over the last few years to kind of open my eyes to that. And, you know, just to be vulnerable and open and willing to make those changes and be really honest with yourself about the areas where you're failing, and not hold on to it for pride's sake or ego's sake as you get there and you're like, no, these things are clearly messed up. These are clearly things I need to address to be a better human being, and there's really no excuse anymore. Yeah. It's not okay to just say, like, well, I'm allowed to do that because I'm a right brain, you know?
Yeah.
And that has been, again, my crutch. And in these coming years, I look forward to really figuring out the way, or learning the ways to become a more well-rounded human being. And really honoring, you know, the
Well,
work
you're
that
in
we
luck.
do.
We live in a hell of a time.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing called the internet, and it connects us to every freaking book ever written.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's in your hands.
It is.
I love it. Hey, thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's good.
Thanks, Charlie.
Good talking to you.
Yep, likewise.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, follow 48 Planks on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
Yes.